Hey Janessa, it's your favorite nurse Jasmine, and I'm back today with another video. So today's video is going to be a nursing video. It is going to be a experience time, as well as some tips and tricks for all of you new grads who are going into your first nursing job and you have to deal with a peer interview. I know that was one of the things I was super nervous about, and I thought was going to be very intimidating, and then I didn't have to do it my first job, but I technically had to do it for one of the jobs that I applied to here in upstate New York. And I was very nervous, but I was very prepared. So I'm going to actually share with you one of the time me and my classmates did a peer interview with a new grad, and it was horrible. It was the worst. I felt so bad for her, but it was just awful. And then I'm also going to give you guys some tips and tricks on how to prepare for your interview. So if you are interested in this video, please continue to watch. Yeah, so me and my nurse best friends, me, Lanita, and Anna, we all actually went through nursing school together, and we graduated and started working at the same job. Me and Anna worked day shift, and Lanita worked night shift. And I loved it. I loved working with them. I loved giving Lanita a report. I loved taking a report after her. Like, we just had so much fun, and we learned a lot with each other. There was a group of new grads who were coming in to interview for an ICU position. The hospital that we worked at wasn't really like a great hospital. It was kind of located in the hood. We had very small resources, and it was like a difficult place to work in, but you learned a lot. So your best chances of getting into the ICU was to kind of work for a hospital that a lot of people didn't want to work for, but the pay was great, so I wasn't complaining. When our director asked us to do a peer interview, me and Anna was looking at each other like, what? Like, we actually had never done a peer interview before, and we was like, you know, we don't know what we're doing, right? And she was like, yes, but this is a good chance for you to learn, as well as you get to potentially meet the people that will be working with you and see if you guys click. And that's the purpose of a peer interview, because not every personality will be a fit. So she had already met with our director, and so the girl that had the peer interview, she had already did her initial interview with our director, and this was her second interview. So when you do a peer interview, your director or manager, she or he doesn't tell you what they thought about the person or what happened with their interview. They just say, here is like a checklist, write this off, here are some questions that we asked, and then you make your recommendation. So me and Anna actually had two interviews that day. We had one with a new grad and one with an experienced nurse, and he was coming from the ED and wanted to go to ICU, but from a different hospital. So then our first interview was actually the new grad, and we were both new grads, so we were not biased to working with new grads. A lot of people hated us when we first started, but it was simply because we were new, and it wasn't just based off of our personality. It's just, it takes so long to train new grads, and so long for us to come off of orientation. So if you are short-staffed, you're short-staffed for 16 weeks, and then you have to hope that the new grad actually makes it through orientation, so that way you can start filling some of your spots. So we were not biased towards a new grad, and I think that's what our director really wanted, because some of the seasoned nurses, they just don't like new grads. So we went in with high hopes, like, dang, like, I hope she's good, like, we really need some nurses, hopefully she fits. So we go into the interview, and we're in a room, and it is her sitting in a chair, and then me and Anna are sitting directly across from her, and there's like no table in the middle. It's just like open space. So we introduce ourselves, she introduces herself, and initially the first thing I noticed was what she was wearing, and I was like, seriously? So she wore just a regular, what are those things called? A cardigan. Like a regular cardigan that you would wear on a day of shopping or eating, I don't know, just like a basic cardigan. And then she had on a cami underneath it, and her boobs were huge. Like, it was the first thing I saw, and I'm like, I'm not into girls, but it was like, you cannot help but see boobs, because they were like spilling out of her cami, and I was just like, this is so bad already. Then she had on jeans and slides, so it was not interview attire. I'm gonna tell you guys, first impressions means the most, and you really need to be business casual. So do not show up in a cardigan, a cami, some jeans, and some slides. Don't do that, because that is one of the things that we actually checked off, was like appearance, presentation, professionalism. And she wasn't professional, so I had to give her points off for that. And then Anna had to do the same thing as well, because she was not dressed professional whatsoever. And I don't know if that's how she showed up to her first interview. I'm hoping that it wasn't, because she did get a second one. So I'm not quite sure why she chose that attire, but it is what it is. So we looked at her resume. Her resume was really basic. It was basically the same as kind of what our resumes look like. It just shows the schools that you went to, all of your clinical hours. So it wasn't anything extravagant, but it wasn't bad. It was just she didn't have any experience, and I didn't expect much from her resume. But for those of you who are like me and other new grads, if you don't have a ton of experience, all I had on there was medical assistant, which helped me a little bit, but not much. Just make sure that you print your resume off on resume paper. Don't just print it off of your printer. Actually go get resume paper, because if all of the new grads resumes look identical, your resume will stand out if you do use resume paper. And that's a little tip and trick for all of you new grads. Her resume was basic. It was printed out on regular printer paper, but I didn't take points off for that. That wasn't even like a box. But like I said, if we had seen 5 new grads and everybody printed theirs off on regular paper, like nobody's resume stood out. So we start to ask her questions, and one of the first questions is, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? That is a common interview question, and honestly, she was just like, my strength is I'm a hard worker and I'm a team player, which is very, very generic. That is something that everybody says. So you need to kind of get creative with your interview responses, especially if you don't have a lot of experience, and also have some examples. And you never want to tell anybody a true weakness, because her weakness was that sometimes, I don't mean to laugh, but she's like, sometimes I'm not the most punctual person. I'm like, you don't tell people that you're interviewing that sometimes you're late. Like, one thing I can tell you that a nurse does not want, I don't want a nurse that's going to be late. When I have done my 12, almost 13 hours of work, depending on how bad or critical my patients are, I don't want to sit here and wait for someone who is late in order to give them report, because depending on how critical the patient is, report can take almost like 15 minutes. So don't tell anybody that you're late. Don't tell anybody that you're not punctual, that, you know, whatever. And she was like, but one way I'm going to fix it is have a lot of alarms. That is not an appropriate answer. Please don't tell a potential job that sometimes you're late. One of the questions we asked her was, has she ever been in a situation that she'd seen that was unethical, or she thought was unethical, and how, what was the results? Like, what did she do in that situation? And she just kept saying, can you explain to me what that means? So then we had to explain to her what an unethical situation was, and she couldn't think of anything, and she couldn't give us answers. And that kind of was how our peer interview continued to go. And then I don't know if at that point she got nervous and she got scared, and we were like laughing and giggling with her, like, calm down, like, relax, like, it's just us in here, like, there's nobody else in here, we were once new grads. We tried to reassure her so many times, but she legit could not really answer any of the interview questions. If you go online and Google like generic interview questions, those are the questions that most hospitals have on a little template that they read off, and they ask you these questions. So you need to kind of be prepared to answer some of the basic generic questions, because I'm telling you, they don't change the mode when it comes to you. It's still the same basic questions. And she really couldn't give us any feedback. And it started, at first, we were trying to help her to calm her down. And then it started to get frustrating, because it's like, this is a career where people's lives are like going to be in your hand, and if you can't even answer some of the basic interview questions, how are you going to handle some of these overbearing, very concerned, sometimes annoying family members who you're caring for their loved ones? Like, it's going to be really difficult for you, and it's just not something that we were comfortable she wasn't someone that we were comfortable recommending for the position. After that, you know, we went and took our recommendations to our director, and me and Anna didn't share because like the room was like 2 rooms away from the director's office. So as soon as she left out, the director was like, oh, can you come in and give me the papers? And me and Anna, we legit didn't have time to like, if we recommended her or not. And then once we gave the director the paper, she looked at both of them and she was like, both of you guys didn't recommend her? And she was like, I kind of figured it, but I wanted to give her a chance because she had a really hard time answering some of the questions during our interview. So I want to tell you guys, even though you get a second interview, sometimes that second interview is your second chance. It is your chance to make a big impression on your colleagues or your potential colleagues, because you're the ones that's going to be working with them every single shift, and it's not really director. And sometimes the director just wants to give you a second chance. They want to see if your potential co-workers will recommend you and say, oh, I think she'll be a good fit, I think she can learn, I think we can help create an amazing nurse and help her bring out the best qualities of herself or himself. And if you bomb that peer interview, I can guarantee you won't get the job. So that's why a lot of hospitals do peer interviews, because even though the director may like you, she or he is not going to be the one that's going to spend 12 hours working with you. And not saying that you have to like answer every question perfectly, because I'm pretty sure I didn't answer every question perfectly my first peer interview, but I did make a good enough impression and I was prepared to answer these questions when I went, and I was actually offered that job and I actually declined because the pay was horrible. So that's what I wanted you guys to know. Like, don't, girls, even if it is a male that could potentially do your peer interview, just don't come with your boobs out. And she just was not prepared for any of the questions. Her cell phone went off a couple of times during the interview, so we had to ask her to mute her cell phone. Like, keep your cell phone either on silent. Don't even put it on vibrate, because you can hear when people's phone vibrate. Leave it in the car or have it in your purse, but turn it off. Your peer interview literally lasts 30 minutes, and you can deal with your phone being away from your phone for 30 minutes. This is going to be your career, and this is something that you have worked hard for. And if you are given the opportunity to do a peer interview, especially in a specialty that is very difficult for new grads to get into, i.e. the ED, the ICU, labor and delivery, mother, baby, NICU, those are very hard areas to get interviews for as a new grad. So if you are given that opportunity, don't blow it. Be prepared, be professional. There are tons of things on Google that will give you example interview questions, and I also have an ebook that is always linked below in my description box that tells you everything about interviews. It breaks it down even more into detail than I did in this video, as well as gives you tips and tricks for your whole first year as a new grad. So make sure to check that out. And yeah, that is the gist of this video. I'm just telling you, I actually love doing peer interviews now. I haven't done one in a year. I haven't done a peer interview in forever, since I worked, since I worked at this hospital that I'm currently working at, because they don't do peer interviews. So not all hospitals do peer interviews, but if you are potentially going to work for one that does them, you definitely need to be prepared, and I am here to help you out with all of that. So if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to leave it below in the comment box. Don't forget to go follow me over on the gram. I post every single time I upload a video, and this summer I'm trying to get better about posting on the gram as well. And also, if you are not subscribed to my channel, make sure to subscribe before you leave. It's absolutely free before you leave my channel, so that way you never miss any of my videos or my vlogs. And until the next video, make sure to stay boss up and conquer.